Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. So last night I completed my 2017 Goodreads challenge. I had challenged myself to read 35 books and I finished my 35th book on immunity last night. After I finished that book, I decided it was probably time to do a recent reads video since I had mentioned doing one a while ago, and I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about 5 books that I finished in the last couple of months that didn't really warrant a full review, and I just wanted to share my feelings on them a little bit, so if you are debating reading them, I can hopefully help you make the decision about whether or not they're worth your time. The first book that I want to talk about is Women Travel. This is a Rough Guides special. Rough Guides is a company that publishes travel guides for countries and cities all over the world. This is a special sort of bind-up that they did of a bunch of different nonfiction stories, all written by women. It was a great way to read about a bunch of different countries that I've never had the chance to read anything on. Some of the stories were definitely better than others. That's usually the case with any sort of book like this. You just appreciate the writing style of certain people more than others. I should also mention that this edition was published in 1999. I picked this up at a library book sale. Therefore, I don't think many of you will have this sitting on your unread shelf, but I can use it as a stand-in for if you have any other sort of travel compendiums like this. If you're looking for a book where you can dive in for a little bit and then set it aside for a week and come back a little bit later and not feel like you've forgotten everything, this is the perfect kind of book for that because each of the stories exists separately. There's no carryover, so you don't have to worry about trying to remember certain characters. I decided to give this one 3 stars. It was all right. It was interesting to read about a time that was pre-9/11 and before technology had become so much a part of our travel experience, but it didn't blow me away. There were some stories that were great, but yeah, 3 stars. The second book that I read was actually one that I borrowed from the library. It's called Eruption, The Untold Story of Mount St. Helens by Steve Olson. The book talks about the history of the area around Mount St. Helens, touches on different volcanic eruptions through the years, and then what happened on that particular day in 1980. I enjoyed most aspects of this book. The one thing that I didn't really enjoy was that there was this huge section at the beginning about the forestry industry around Mount St. Helens because it's such a big deal, and it does play a part in the events around the eruption, so Steve Olson gave a lot of background on that, too much in my opinion, so it definitely dragged during that part, but once I was able to get past that, I just whizzed through the rest of this book. Steve Olson talks about the people who were around the volcano on the day it erupted, whether they were scientists, people that lived in the area, people who were just out for the weekend, and what happened to them. It's the kind of book where you know that something bad is going to happen, so the entire time you're reading it, you're feeling very tense, and the buildup is there, and then once it all happens, it's just like, oh man, it's great. For that reason, I gave it 4 stars. I think if that forestry section at the beginning had just been sliced down to a fraction of the size, this would have been a really good potential for a 5-star read, but since that didn't happen, I just couldn't give it more than 4 stars. If you're looking to read about Mount St. Helens and you want something that's accessible, this is a good book. It's not particularly long as you're okay with getting through that forestry section at the beginning, because I'm not lying, it's a little tough at points. The next 2 books are reads that I finished during the autumn readathon, and I wanted to expand on them a little bit. The first one that I finished was A Clerical Error by J.J. Carter. This is a self-published book. I wanted to pick this up for the autumn readathon because it seemed like it was going to be kind of spooky. It's about a vicar in a small parish in England whose neighbor dies. Everyone else in the parish thinks it was a heart attack, but the vicar is convinced it was murder. The writing in this book was quite good. With the self-published books that I've read, oftentimes the writing can be a little iffy, and I found this very easy to read, which was nice because it was a readathon, so I was looking for something that I knew I could get through quite easily. I enjoyed the characters in this book. As with any stereotypical small English village, you've got your quirky characters, you've got your mean people, you've got your normal people, and they definitely all exist in this book. The story, however, does not hold up throughout the entire book. I liked the premise of where this is going. The vicar thinks that someone has killed his neighbor. Everyone else is convinced that the vicar is crazy, thinking that this guy just died from a heart attack. And then it introduces this supernatural element, which I was also okay with up to a certain point. As we got farther and farther in the book, I realized that we weren't going to get as much information about this supernatural element as I was hoping for, and I found the ending to be a total cop-out. It just seemed to me like the author had this idea and he had it planned up to a certain point, and then he was like, well, I don't think I can get myself out of this, so I'm just going to do this instead. I decided to give the book 3 stars. I enjoyed the writing and the characters, and it was an easy read for me. However, I was hoping for a bit more from the ending and just from the story in general. The other book that I finished during the autumn readathon that I wanted to talk a little bit more about was Broken Monsters by Lauren Bukes. This one is probably familiar to a few of you. It's definitely been making its rounds on BookTube, and Lauren Bukes has written a few other books that people have definitely been talking about on here. Detroit has been rocked by this murder in which the body of a boy has been fused to the body of a deer. We follow the detective who is trying to figure out who this person is and why they're doing it, as well as the shenanigans that her daughter is getting up to, what the homeless population is dealing with around Detroit, and then also the murderer and what's going on in his head. I found the beginning to be a bit slow, but then the middle picked up and it was so good. It was very creepy in a good way, and I was really liking where the story was going, and we were building up to the end, and then the last 50 pages just, oh, it just ruined it for me. It was so, it was such a disappointment. It was gonna be a 4-star read, and in the last 50 pages, things just got very dreamlike and otherworldly, and I couldn't follow what was going on, and that always pisses me off when we feel like everything has been pretty rooted in reality, and then things just get really weird, and there's not quite a way to explain it. If you've read this, tell me I'm not crazy, that you also felt this way down in the comments. I mean, try to keep it spoiler free, of course, but did anybody else feel like this was very rooted in reality other than what the murderer was going through? Because he obviously was having some mental difficulties, but then we're still following those characters that are rooted in reality at the end, and things just got so weird. Ugh. So disappointing when that happens. So yeah, this ended up being a 3-star read just because those last 50 pages just really killed it for me. And then finally, I want to mention the book that I finished last night, On Immunity by Eula Biss. This is a nonfiction book that I started during Nonfiction November but didn't finish, and I knew I was going to finish it by the end of the year because it's really tiny. This is about vaccines from the point of view of a new mom who is researching the controversy around them and sort of deciding for herself her opinions on them, and she is getting opinions from people from all sides of the argument. I loved getting the history of vaccines, the history of particular diseases like smallpox, tetanus, polio, chickenpox, and the details that she was able to put into this book. However, I found other parts of it kind of repetitive or unnecessary. I wanted more about the vaccines and the diseases themselves and a little less about some of the other stuff that she focused on. There were certainly books that she mentioned in here that I feel like I could add to my TBR that would give me a lot more of what I was looking for. In the end, I gave it 3 stars. There were certain parts of this book that I loved, certain facts that I was learning about that I was sharing with my boyfriend because they were just so interesting, but at the same time, there were many parts where I just was kind of like, this is okay, but I want more of that vaccine, disease, and nitty-gritty stuff. And that's it. If you have read any of the 5 books that I talked about here today, feel free to share your thoughts below, whether you liked it or didn't like it, any other points that I didn't mention that you want to bring up without being spoilery, of course. As always, all of our links are in the doobly-doo. Check those out if you feel so inclined. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you later.